This conference will now.
All right. So, anyone, any questions, guys, before we move forward with this today's session? Any questions from yesterday's class? Did you all try creating the ARM template for the virtual network and the storage accounts? Any questions there? Anything that I can take there? Anyone? Any questions there?
Hi Kiran.
Good, please.
Yesterday I created two subnetworks and one
Okay.
storage account.
Okay.
Storage account was created in subnetwork one.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
so how how it will? I didn't declare that store it on subnetwork one and two. So
See, firstly, in
automatically,
order to yeah, in order to tell that, I'll have to look at your template. So once I look at your template, then I'll be able to comment on why exactly your storage account is sitting in, let's say, subnet one, and why not subnet two out there. So if you can send me your template across, I'll look into that and I can reply back on the same thing out there.
okay.
Yes, any more questions here? Okay.
Hi
Yes,
Kiran.
sorry. Go ahead, Shiva.
Yeah, is it possible to create multiple storage account in multiple subnets?
Multiple storage accounts in multiple subnets. Yes, it is
Yeah.
possible to create storage. I mean, it is possible to go ahead and do that. Slightly a little tricky, but yes, it is possible to go ahead and, let's say, create multiple storage accounts under multiple subnets out here. But but you need to have some kind of a configuration mapping. Like, you need to tell somewhere, you need to declare that storage account 1 needs to go into subnet 1, storage account 2 needs to go into subnet 2, and all these things out. And once that is done, then we can go ahead, do a copy index using some advanced properties out there, and then go ahead and, let's say, create your storage account 1 and subnet 1 and all these things. But yes, it is possible. Slightly a little tricky, but it is possible out here. Yes, any more questions here?
Hi, sir.
Good, please.
Sir, I'm client given 50 storage accounts one time. I'm apply subnet one.
Okay.
Remaining how many subnets? Remaining how many subnets? I know, sir. I completed it to 50. Remaining 255. How to know, sir, that one?
Okay. Okay,
In after
remaining
1 week after,
okay.
how to know? How to identify that one?
See, generally, when you say how many subnets or how many addresses are empty inside a particular store or inside, let's say, a particular virtual network,
Yes, sir.
if you go into the virtual network and click on the subnet there, right, it will tell
Yes.
you what are the available IP addresses that are available out there. So
Okay.
normally, when you create, let's say, a slash 24, you will get, let's say, a subnet with around 251 IP addresses. And
Yes.
as in when
Yes,
you
sir.
keep adding those storages out there, right, the amount of IP addresses will start reducing. So you can just go to the portal
Okay.
and look at what are the available IPs out there, and that should give you an idea telling that how many more IPs that you can have in your, let's say, virtual network and etc.
Thanks.
Okay. Yes, any more questions, guys? Okay, so let me go into the concept today and let's come back into our drawing board and let's do some theory today. So before I go into the concept today, I just want to again take everyone back into the first class when we actually started all these demonstration, all these things. Now, if you remember, I started off in the very first class with an example telling that, okay, fine, you have an IRCTC web application and you want to develop that and all that stuff. So let's see this. I'm now talking about application development. And let's take an example called irctc.co.in, which is, let's say, the Government of India website, which allows you to go ahead and do some ticket reservation, or you can also book food and all that stuff. Now, in order to develop this application, I need some kind of a code, which is not my headache as a DevOps engineer, which is now a developer who needs to worry about this. So let's say I put a developer, and a developer writes this particular code. Or I'll just say developer out here. So a developer is working with you in your organization, which is task. And this organization is responsible to go ahead and create this particular application called irctc.co.in. Let's say that this developer is using some kind of a .NET code or a HTML code, whatever the code that is available out there in the market, and he's going ahead and making this application ready. So he's writing the code for this particular application, and now the code is ready right now. Okay, so now you have a code. Now my question is, where do you run this code on, or what is, let's say, the target? So if someone has a question. All right, so my question right now to everyone is that I have the code right now. Now, where do you run the code, or where do you where do you put the code so that people on the internet can actually look at your application and etc. Where do you think that this code can really run on?
Web server.
I'm sorry, can you come again, please?
Web server.
Server. Okay. Anyone else who has a different understanding about this? So I have the code. The code is ready with me, and I sorry, I have the code. The code is ready with me, and I want to now run my application. So I want to store my code somewhere so that you and me, who are users online, when we visit that particular IRCTC application, etc., in the background, I'm nothing but accessing, or I'm working, or I'm playing around with that particular code out here. So where do you think that I can store this code so that you can access this out?
So we have to check the code whether it is validation is passed or not.
Mhm.
So
So let's
everything
say
is
validation
passed.
is passed. Yes.
Yes, yeah, everything is correct only. We have to put in some we have to access means we have to put in some storage container. That's nothing but a server. So we can access it
So
through Play Store or something.
through the Play Store, exactly. So you can download that particular application and then you can access it to the Play Store and all that stuff. So meaning you need some kind of a server. Now I'm talking about servers. So exactly, yes. We, in the first generation of application development, I'll say this is the first generation. We used to buy servers from companies, from different companies out here, like Dell and all that stuff. And whenever the developer used to develop this code out, we used to go ahead, place this code on top of a server, some kind of a storage space or something like that, on top of this particular server. And as and when this code is placed on top of the server, you as a user, let's put you here as a user, can go to this particular application called irctc.co.in, and this particular application will just divert it back to the code, and this code will be running on these servers out here, and these servers will have some kind of a compute power. When I say compute power, they have their own CPU, RAM, hard drive, all these things, all these physical attributes out here, which will go ahead, process your request, take your request, understand what you're trying to do, whether you're trying to book your ticket, whether you're just trying to, let's say, see whether the train is available or not, and all that stuff, process it out, and then send the request back to you, or then send the content back to you, the process content back to you. This is what how an application development actually works. And let me put my developer here who's writing the code and placing the code on top of the server out here. Now the issue with this particular model of development is that we faced a lot of issues in buying these servers, because these servers is something that I cannot, let's say, go ahead and buy from a market out there. I cannot just go walk into a computer shop and tell that, you know what, I need a server. The shop guy will literally laugh on top of my face telling that, you know what, I don't have a server. You'll have to go to a manufacturer. And if I go to a manufacturer like, let's say, someone like Dell, they will say, you know what, I need about 3 to 6 months out here, or 3 months out here, not to give you a very, very big target out here. Let's say I need about 3 months out here to go ahead and manufacture the server and ship it out to you and all that stuff, which is firstly a lot of capital expenditure. And it's actually a lot of, let's say, maintenance and all that stuff. And if I want to scale my application up, when I say scale my application up, let's say I designed this application only thinking that there will be about 100 users visiting this per minute, but now there are about 1,000 users visiting this per minute. The backend capacity is not sufficient, so I need to add one more server here. I need to purchase one more server and all these things. So what used to happen is that I'm not effectively utilizing my underlying infrastructure, and also I'm spending a lot of, let's say, money on buying this particular infrastructure, maintaining this infrastructure, and etc. Let me now turn the situation slightly a little bit different when I'm coming down to the second generation of, let's say, application development. Again, the same code, IRCTC, same developer, same application called IRCTC, same developer who's writing this code for IRCTC out here. The same developer who's writing this particular code, good enough. But what happened this time is that I, as an organization, I am not going ahead and buying multiple servers. Rather, yes, I am buying servers, that's true. I am buying limited servers out here. And what happened right now is that there came a company called VMware. Now, VMware is a very popular company out here, which came up with a technology called hypervisor, or a piece of software called hypervisor out here. What this hypervisor does is that it allows you to go ahead and do a logical separation of your server. When I say logical separation of your server, simply means that you can run multiple applications or multiple, let's say, services called as a virtual machine out here right now. This is where I'm now getting into something called as virtual machine, nothing but a piece of software that you can run on top of a hypervisor. What this does is that it simply tricks your servers. You can call this as a virtual machine or a server, anything works fine with me. It tricks your machines, telling that, you know what, this machine knows that there is about 100 GB of RAM that I can utilize. So does this machine. This machine also knows that there is 100 GB of RAM, and this machine doesn't know that this machine exists. Neither this machine knows that this machine exists. So though they are running on the same physical server, they have a logical separation in between them, which tricks them to believe that each and every server has the entire capacity out here, a logical capacity out here. So what really happened here is that now I could have gone ahead, or I can now go ahead, I can now deploy the same IRCTC code on top of, let's say, this particular server initially. And in case the load is increasing, I can also go ahead and utilize this server. I can also go ahead and utilize this server and all these things out. So the scaling of the application is really very efficient, meaning I now have a freedom to move my application from one machine to another machine. I can freely move this, or I can deploy the same application on all the three machines out here. All the three machines can serve the request for this particular, let's say, application called IRCTC. So now if you look at this, let's say, application model, you as a user are visiting this particular IRCTC application, which goes to the code, the code goes to one of these three servers or all three servers at any given point in time. This machine will interact with the hypervisor. Hypervisor will interact with the underlying server, and then your request is served back. This machine will serve your request back on whatever you want to do, book your tickets or all these things out. So now I have a web of, let's say, servers that are helping me out here, and I'm not right now buying a lot of servers out here. Rather, I'm logically dividing my servers using a technology called hypervisor, which was introduced by someone called VMware and all these things. Again, I need to, let's say, license it out. I need to buy this particular software called VMware and need to install this and do a lot of things out here. So this is where the application development is now falling out here, wherein we are now telling that, you know what, why do you want to go and buy so many servers out here? Just buy one particular server, place it in, install the hypervisor, install on top of the hypervisor, go ahead, run something called as a virtual machine. And the reason it is called as a virtual machine is because you cannot physically touch this machine. You cannot physically go ahead and, let's say, close this machine and all that stuff. It's just a piece of software. So it's now a logical unit that is running on an underlying server out here. Now, again, coming down to the point is that in the third generation, or let's say in the second generation only, I would say one small advancement came into picture, which I'll say second generation cloud, wherein I'm telling that, you know what, as a cloud provider, or let's say as an organization, I don't even want to buy this particular server, because if I have to buy this server again, I'll have to wait for the same 90 days out there, huge waiting period and all these things. But rather, I will let someone called Microsoft buy the server. Microsoft did buy the server, and they are placing it inside something known as a data center. And there are, you as you all know, there are about 60 plus data centers around the world, wherein they are going ahead and buying the server, placing the server, and maintaining the server. When I say maintaining the server, you have a team of engineers who, let's say, it's not just one server again, it's like multiple servers out here sitting inside a data center as such. And you have a team of engineers who are maintaining it, and also Microsoft installs the hypervisor software on top of it. Install the hypervisor software on top of it, takes care of all these servers, maintains them, puts all these things out here, and etc. You, as an end user, again, your same developer out here, you have a code, you have written the code and etc. Now I'll bring in one more person called as an infrastructure engineer or an administrator who knows about Azure. So I'll say it is Azure administrator, or you can also say an Azure DevOps engineer, who, using the Azure portal, using the subscription of Azure, will simply go ahead and create a virtual machine, create a VM or a virtual machine, which goes ahead and attaches itself to one of the available servers out there. This is where I want to get into. This is what I want to do to create a VM. And finally, the end goal here is to take this VM as a platform to host my code. And when I have the application called IRCTC out here, as an end user again, if you just go into this particular application, this will simply go into the backend code, and the backend code is running, let's say, on your virtual machine, and the virtual machine is running in background, let's say, on a hypervisor. Everything is everything is the same, but I, as an organization, I'm not buying all these things. I'm not going ahead and, let's say, buying all these things and maintaining all these things. No, I am now in an agreement with a cloud provider like Microsoft Azure. I have, let's say, went ahead, enrolled in their subscription, and now I have a capability to create any number of machines that I wish to. Of course, it is chargeable. We'll also talk about what are the charges and all that stuff, and use this machine as a web server or a web service out here that can hold my code. And as a user, you can browse into my application and all these things out here, etc. So this this is where I officially introduce the concept of something called as a virtual machine, and what is the use case scenario of a virtual machine and what happens really in the background out there. So before I move ahead into the portal, any questions that I can take with this particular theory part of it? Can you
Hypervisor
please repeat
means
about, yeah, good, sorry, Cycling, good, sorry.
software or storage container name or anything.
Can you come again, please?
Hypervisor means if that's a software name you're saying or any server
Which one?
storage name.
Which one,
Hypervisor.
sorry? See, hypervisor is the name or a piece of a software that gets installed on top of your physical infrastructure, meaning you have a server, you install this particular piece of software called hypervisor or a VMware. You can call it as any which way is possible, not a problem. This logically divides your server, so you can you can utilize your space in a better way as such. So it's nothing but a piece of software that you can you go ahead and install on top of something.
Sir, for example, if you create any virtual machine, that's
Hmm.
so for example, I want to run application. It's
Hmm.
only for application only, or web application is different and normal application is different. Is like that is there?
No, applications as in like again when you say web application really means the same thing out there. Application simply means that if you are able to, let's say, use that to go ahead and, let's say, in my case, I want to book the tickets. If something is going ahead and helping me out to book the tickets, that's an application for me. So you can have in the same place, you can say, what, I want to deploy something called Uber, or I have something called Ola, or I have something else of an application, and I can run any kind of a website on top of this particular, let's say, virtual machine out here that I have. Does that answer your question?
As a developer,
Mhm.
will will create a virtual machine.
No, as a developer, you're not expected to create a virtual machine. As as a DevOps engineer or an infrastructure engineer or an Azure administrator, that's our
Oh,
job to go ahead and create this particular virtual machine out here. As a developer, you're just expected to write the code that sits on top of this particular virtual machine.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions here?
The developers, I can,
Good, please.
the developers directly write the code in virtual machine or in the
No,
server.
no, they don't write the code directly in their virtual machine. They write the code in their local machines. Like they will have their own laptops or their desktops and etc. They'll write their code in that particular desktop, and how do we deploy the code? That's something that we'll see. Yes, any more questions here? Okay, so then how do I let's put the developer a little bit aside today. Let's talk about the infrastructure part of it. Before I introduce the developer needs an infrastructure where his code can, let's say, really run on. Okay. Akshay, do you have a question? I see you on mute. So do you have a question there?
Yes, sir.
Go, please.
So if the virtual machine is running on portal,
Mm-hmm.
does it mean we have to be on for 24 hours? Sir? And there, is that the same portal like we use or different?
When you say the virtual machine running on the portal, so when you say portal, it's Azure portal is what I'm assuming, right? You're talking about the Azure portal as
Yes,
such.
sir.
Yes. So
Yes.
does it have to run 24/7? It depends upon what kind of an application that you're building. Let's say if it's IRCTC,
Like
something like this that I'm, yes, let's say an example, IRCTC. If this application has to run 24/7, then the platform on which this particular application is hosted should also be running 24/7. Let's say if this is an application that is only available for a user from 9 to 5, then your virtual machine in the background can only run from 9 to 5 out here. So it depends upon what exactly that we are developing and what is the use case scenario for which we are developing out here. Depending upon that, I could say that, okay, fine, yes, your application will run 24/7, or no, the application can be off for some time and all these things out here.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, so I, as an infrastructure engineer, I want to now go ahead and understand how do I create something called as a virtual machine out here. Again, before I create a virtual machine, just to reiterate, I need a tenant, which I have. I need a subscription, a valid subscription, whether it be a free trial or a pay as you go, whatever it is. I need a resource group, and then I can go ahead, create a virtual machine. And very importantly, if you want to create a virtual machine, you will definitely need one more component called as a virtual network and a subnet inside a virtual network. This is where I'm coming down to, and this is how I am integrating the concept that we know yesterday. You cannot create a virtual machine without having a virtual network out here. So let's go ahead and start the creation of all these resources, and then let's finally go ahead and create something called as a virtual machine out here. So I have a tenant, I have a subscription, goes without saying. I have a resource group called demo.rg, but I don't want to use that. I'll create a new, let's say, resource group called VMRG, my virtual machine RG out here, and I'll say this is ECS2, and I'll review and create this out. So I'm creating firstly a resource group for myself. After I create a resource group, let me go ahead, search for something called virtual network, and let me provision a virtual network for myself. So I'll go ahead, create a virtual network. I'll say this is a VM or a VNet demo, something like this. Very, very important. Your virtual machine and the virtual network should have to be in the same region. You cannot have a virtual network sitting in a region A and a virtual machine sitting in region B and attach both of them. You cannot do that. Impossible to do that. So what I'll do, I'll go ahead and I'll choose a location like EastUS2. I'll say IP addressing. I'm taking the default IP address, which is 10.0.0.04/16 with one simple subnet. You can also add multiple subnets out here. I'll say security, all this I'll disable, just take the default options out here. Tags optional in nature, and I'll review and create this out. So I am creating a resource group firstly, a virtual network, and a subnet inside that particular virtual network. So this is what I have till here. Inside the resource group, I have now a VNet, and inside a VNet, I have a subnet. And finally, after creating all these things, I'll go ahead and add something known as a virtual machine out here. So once this is done, I'll start with the creation of virtual machine. And when I say virtual machine, guys, it's a set of resources that gets created. It's just not a virtual machine. There are a lot of resources. Unlike storage account, when we say storage account is an isolated resource. We just went ahead, created a storage account, very simple thing, and we went ahead and let's say created containers inside it. Unlike that, virtual machine requires the understanding of a lot of resources, which we will see in in a let's say in a very phased manner to understand what are the different resources out here and all these things out. But let's start the creation. So I now have the VMRG. Inside the VMRG, I have the virtual network. I'll now say create, and I'll now say, okay, fine, you know what? Go ahead and create something called as a virtual machine. You can again search it from here, or you can say virtual machines. Anything is okay with me. You can type this